Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this workshop. I'm there you go. I just put a bunch of links into the chat. One of them is the spreadsheet, or not the spreadsheet, the slideshow. One is what I'll call a one sheet, even though it's about 4 sheets. But it's all it's a bunch of different tech and systems tools, some of which I'll be talking about in this workshop, some of which I won't. So it's a larger list than what we're talking about. It's got links to pricing and features and stuff. And then the third list is an archive to, the other things on this list, but also I've been doing different iterations of this workshop for getting close to 5 years. So there are old versions of different ones. There are, videos from workshops that are oriented towards campaigns. There are ones that are oriented towards parties and things like that. So those are just some archival resources. But today, I'm gonna be doing a workshop titled "What is a Resource?" In the past, these workshops have been a massive data dump of potential resources that we can use for digital organizing. That's still somewhat true about today's workshop. It will end that way. But the beginning of this, and really every workshop I've done on this topic has continued to evolve more and more in this direction. But the beginning is going to be a little more theoretical, asking the question, what is a resource and what do we actually provide for candidates, locals, organizers when they want to go green? And I think it's an important discussion that we need to be having from the local level all the way up to the national level. We'll have some chance for questions and answers, but I'll also try to keep on top of the chat as I go, and if I see something, I'll try to integrate it in at the appropriate time, so that we're not, if I can answer it quick when we're talking about that thing, I'll answer it quick. But so yeah, what is a resource? Digital organizing tools. My name is Chris Blankenhorn. I am presently the Illinois Green Party Secretary, former GPUS co-chair from 2016 to 2018. I served as the Howie Hawkins, Angela Walker 2020 social media and tech director. I've aged out, but I was the vice chair of the Young Eco-Socialist Education Committee for a few years. I'm a former GPUS Merchandise Committee co-chair and an Illinois Green Party an ILGP GPUS National Committee delegate. That is a few of the many hats that I have worn over the years, but most Greens kind of understand that multiple hats scenario. So to get started, I want to start with the question, what is a resource, right? In mainstream politics, resources tends to mean money. That's the primary resource when we're talking about, campaigns that are ran under the Republican and Democratic and the Libertarian as well parties. Campaigns, party committees, PACs, super PACs, soft money, dark money. Our entire election system is set up around controlling and funneling money, right? In presidential elections, we're talking in terms of billions of dollars spent running campaigns. And the main resource that people think about and focus on is money. There's obviously other things involved, but money is the primary thing. If you want to have good staff, you need money to pay good staff. If you want to have a well-organized volunteer crew, you need money to pay for materials. You need good staff who require wages to make sure you've got good volunteer coordinators. So a lot of things in politics always come back to money, and that's not surprising, right? We live in capitalist America. It's all going to come back to the almighty dollar. But the important question for Greens is, where does that leave us, right? We're a money poor party. We're especially if we're comparing ourselves, right, to the Republicans and the Democratic parties. An example of this, when I was on the merchandise committee, there was, and Greens often have this expectation. I don't know why. We don't have a little more self-awareness, but there was this expectation that as Greens, we would get some kind of special treatment from our merchandise providers, that they would bend the rules, that we would get sweetheart deals. And I, after a conversation with our merchandise providers, I was on the merchandise committee call, and I said, I just want to put some things in context. And I said, you know, the National Green Party sells approximately maybe $15,000 worth of merchandise a year. The Howie Hawkins campaign sold about $90,000 in 2020. Biden, who was one single candidate with the Democratic Party, sold $70 million in merchandise, and we used the same merchandise supplier. And most of the Democratic Party uses them as well. So, you know, we really have to, you know, keep in mind where we are when we're talking about money, that we really are this very small fish. So where does that leave us, right? If we can't compete on money, and money is the primary you know, resource that is engaged in mainstream politics, what do we do? Like I said, we're generally short on main resources for organizing campaigns. Because of this, we need to think outside the box in terms of what a resource means. If it's not money, what do we bring to the table for local Green candidates, local chapters, coalition allies? And I think we need to not be afraid to have these hard conversations in our locals, in our state parties, in the national party, in GPUS. We need to have a serious conversation about what do you get for being a Green. And that's not like a quid pro quo, I need something, right? But just what do we provide to support the people that we, you know, to support our members? So we really need to have these conversations. So, you know, kind of homework, we could, you know, pause and we could spend this whole hour plus having this conversation on this slide alone, but it's really more of a homework slide. So, you know, my task for you is, after we're done with this workshop, right, after you've heard what I have to say and seen some options that are available, I want you to go back to your state party. I want you to go to your local party. I want you to go to your, you know, movement coalition that you're part of. I want you to, you know, go onto the national committee list and say, what resources do we, the party, offer to candidates, to chapters, to individual organizers? And, you know, obviously the same question goes for GPUS, but that extends into caucuses and committees and things like that, right? When you become a Green Party local, what kind of support do you get? Are you on your own? Is it a trial by fire? Which I'll answer my own rhetorical question, and it's often a trial by fire with minimal support, and that is setting us up for failure, right? That's setting us up to burn people out. That's setting us up to push people away, right? And so I want people to go home and into their organizing groups and ask these questions. What do people get when they come to us? And then follow that up with, you know, questions about, what does your local or state party struggle with, right? Start identifying areas where you're having problems. You know, I'll raise volunteer coordination. It's been better in recent years, but historically the Green Party, you know, national party, GPUS, people volunteer, and it just often went into a void. They would go, you know, they wouldn't be contacted, they wouldn't be forwarded to their states, and then by the time we did contact them, the contact was cold. And that's on top of the fact that anyone who's done volunteer coordination knows how frustrating it can be, right? Because someone can email you, sign up on your contact form, and you can reach out to them 5 minutes later and they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about now, right? So there's already a problem with getting volunteers actively engaged, and it gets even worse if we're, you know, not actively in there. Is it, you know, how does, you know, another area that you can think about, does your local party, does your state party send e-blasts, right? Are you active on social media? Are you actively trying to communicate with your members and potential supporters? You know, think about when you have a campaign come on, or a new local startup, what areas of that campaign, what areas of that chapter, what areas of that new organizer came on, what areas do they struggle with? And then once we've kind of identified these problem areas, then we can ask the serious question, right? How can we can look at solutions? And one of the ways we can look at solutions, and it's not the only way, right? I will be very, very clear. Digital tools are not a silver bullet and should not be thought of, you know, as such. They are one part of what should be a robust and diversified organizing toolkit. But once we've kind of answered these questions, then we ask ourselves, how can we fill these gaps? What kind of tools could we employ? What kind of tactics could we employ? You know, we're having problems with volunteer engagement. Well, how do we get someone to actively engage in them? My answer is, you need a staffer, right? You need someone that's at least getting a stipend, because when we're all overloaded volunteers in the Green Party, right? Most Green Party members, active members, wear way too many hats. We have more things on our plate than we can clear in a day. And so if you want your stuff, right, if you want a volunteer coordinator that will always be on point, a wage is how you get that consistency, right? Because when you're a volunteer and life piles up, when there's something busy like the A&M, right? I had to tell some people that I'm working with on other things, like nothing, I'm not doing anything in the week ahead of this. I'm prepping with multiple workshops. So I had to put things on pause to do this other thing. And that's what happened when we have a volunteer base. So, think about these things, both in terms of tools and broader toolkits, but today we're going to focus on tools. So what are resources outside money, right? People, right? Obviously, the Green Party likes to very much think of ourselves as a people-powered party, and if we're going to succeed, we're going to have to be that people-powered party. We cannot compete with the billions and billions and billions of dollars that are dropped by mainstream politicians and the capitalist parties, right? Even if we really up our game and we are rock star fundraisers, we're not going to be able to compete with that level, right? We do not. It's just not going to happen. At least, especially at our current capacity. But if we're going to succeed, we're going to overcome it with people. I will say I've got a lot of criticisms of the Bernie Sanders campaign. I've got a lot of criticisms of the politics and the tactics involved in the Bernie Sanders campaigns in 2016 and 2020. But they did show that you can mobilize people and put up a real threat. Another alternative type of resource, that because we're talking about parties and organizations today, is permanence, right? We have our parties offer a long-term vehicle for organizing. Political campaigns, electoral campaigns, issues campaigns are often finite things. They have a beginning and an end, and when it ends, it's over. Right. And so what the party, what your local chapter, what your state party, what the national party, what your caucuses, your committees, that party infrastructure offers a permanence that can move, that can survive, and upon which we can build and grow. And so I really want people to, think of their parties in this way, that this is the foundation upon which the party is built. And campaigns might get more, presidential years, our presidential campaign is going to get more attention. It'll bring more people in, but it's absolutely key for us to then work on and improve our ability to funnel the energies and the membership and the supporters from that campaign into our long-term parties. And it's something that, it's never going to be a 100% success rate. You're never going to, have a really energetic and great campaign and 100% of the people that voted for you become active members. That's not a realistic, expectation. I don't even think 10% is a realistic expectation. But we have to be better than we're doing now. We have to make sure that part of our, both the party and campaigns focus is how we integrate. And one way we can help that integration is through systems, right? And that's another area, that's the area that this workshop is going to focus on, is the idea that technology systems, tech systems, apps, that kind of stuff is major long-term resource that you deploy to help people. And my argument is that systems are a much more efficient and affordable way for us to make an impact as a party than the current money system that we have now. So while state and local parties often do provide limited financial assistance for candidates, we don't get much bang for our buck out of that. We throw a couple $100 here, we throw a couple $100 there. Even at the national level, the CC's, the Coordinated Campaign Committee, might have a few $1,000s in an election to throw around. But when we compare that to what's coming out of the mainstream parties, it's not enough to compete, right? So my argument is that we can provide way bigger bang for our buck by investing in maintaining a solid and modern party infrastructure. Like I said, the limited nature of campaigns makes the party the ideal space to maintain this long-term technology infrastructure and volunteer base. We often see campaigns, especially presidential campaigns, because of their scale, as kind of innovators within the party, right? That they're the ones introducing new apps to do phone banking and introducing new, new different tools to, new ways to do fundraising or new ways to collect money, that kind of thing. Those are often coming out of campaigns because they're a lot more fluid, they're a lot more agile, they usually have more money, and they have to be active. But when they develop those things, when they put these new systems and infrastructure in place, and then they close, right? Their election ends and they shut the doors, those things die with them. So we want to make sure as these kind of innovations are coming in that they're being transferred over to the party, or that the party itself is the one that is, actually hosting these resources, because that will allow campaign after campaign to reactivate. The party will also allow, a space where we can have people who are knowledgeable about these things and a volunteer base that can come out and get into them. Phone banking would be a good example of this. Obviously any campaign can set up phone banking, but if your state party does regular phone banking, maintains a phone banking system, that means you can, have someone that's in the role of a phone banking coordinator that knows how to write scripts, that knows how to coach callers, and then they can help every campaign that runs in your state. And similarly with, the volunteer base with phone banking, phone banking is great, but you can't make it unless there are people there to make the calls, right? And so a campaign will obviously supply a lot of those, but the more people that you have, actively involved in a volunteer base within your party is, again, something that's not just going to the one campaign, but can be offered out to, from the presidential level all the way down to, park. So as Greens, we have to be more efficient with our limited resources. And, I really do think that in our current capacity, in the current stage in our development, we really need to be looking at systems as a way to do that. So what can we tangibly offer, right? We can offer our database, contact lists, membership, lists, and you should do this with the data sharing agreement, right? You should have people signing an NDA. You should have people signing something official. Part of that should be a data, not just that I won't take this and run, but also that at the end of the campaign, I'll share my lists with you with the state party as well, in exchange for the state party giving access to their list in the beginning. So there's the campaign or the local or the movement that you're working with gets that boost of the initial contact list that we have, and the party gets the boost at the end or throughout as more new people come in contact with that campaign. An example of this that I have heard was that when Dennis Kucinich was running for president, he approached a Green Party about list sharing, and the promise was that they would give him his list, and he would contact Greens. He would contact our base of progressives and socialists, and they would hopefully, in his mind, support his kind of insurgency campaign for president of the Democratic Party, and then at the end of the campaign, he would share his list back. Well, that's not how that played out. How it played out was they gave him the lists. Those lists went into the NGP van, which is the Democratic Party's contact list, because that's what he and all the Democrats use. Those lists became property of the Democratic Party, and he gave nothing in return at the end, right? Which should have been predictable. Anybody, I think there was this hope that Dennis Kucinich wasn't the sheepdog of that year, that Dennis Kucinich was someone different. But the reality was we made a deal with the opponent, and the opponent screwed us, and we should never be surprised by that. So when we talk about the first thing I said, what is an alternative resources people? That's the first thing as parties that we can put on the table, right? Our contact lists, our membership, access to those, ability to send emails, that kind of thing. Again, with an NDA and a data share agreement. I put those links in the chat early on. If you go to bit.ly/DOT info, I've got all the past slideshows and stuff, like I said, but I also have an example candidate agreement from the Illinois Green Party that we have used. So you can kind of look at it and see what that kind of agreement might look like. We can offer financial transaction processing and compliance, right? When people start their campaign, they're going to need to collect money. If they're going to be a serious campaign that hires staff, that puts out materials, that is able to actually go out into the field and campaign, they're going to need some money. Even if it's a low money campaign, they're going to need some money. It's how the world works. You can't print, thousands of door hangers and things like that to talk to people without some money. You can't have yard signs. Like I said, you can't have paid professional staff that will show up, as opposed to volunteers who are going to have to drop some things when they get voted. And so we can help with that. And when you're taking money as a political campaign, there's a whole lot of rules, right? I'm very, very proud of our 2020 Hawkins Walker Treasurer and Travis Crystal. We had 0 fines. We were never fined by the FEC in 2020, right? And that's huge. I don't think, and I haven't looked back in past campaigns, but that's an aberration for Green presidential campaigns and for presidential campaigns in general, right? And because the mainstream campaigns have so much money, they don't care if they get fined. There's slaps on the wrists for them, but there's a lot of money for us. Which is evidenced by Jill Stein being forced to pay $180,000 back to the FEC. At this point, almost a decade after her election is over. So it's really important that not only do we teach people how to take this money, but that we train them and make sure they're doing it right. And the party, with our requirements as 527s to actually report to the FEC, we should have people that have a little bit more knowledge about that. We can provide phone banking systems and the volunteers to actually engage in those systems. We can provide project and team management spaces. We can provide communication tools. We can provide social media resources and volunteers. We can provide web hosting, graphic design, that kind of stuff. And at the end, after I'm about to go through a whole bunch of different tools that we can actually plug into this. But at the end, I'll show a sample of what a state party's kind of infrastructure list could look like. It's based off of what we've done in the Illinois Green Party in the last few years. So to start off, I started off with lists, so that's where we'll start. In order to utilize our membership as a resource, we have to actually actively engage them, right? If our members are just people in a spreadsheet and we never talk to them, are they really members? And I will say, this is an area that, even in my own state party, we don't do it well enough, right? I reached out to, I'll be frank, and in my personal opinion, in my, almost over a decade at this point of national, green engagement, I'm of the opinion that the Allegheny Green Party in Pittsburgh is our best political in the country right now. They are our best, the best organizing that we have. I asked one of their main organizers how they did with email marketing, and he said not good enough, right? So I don't think there's anywhere in the party that's doing good enough on this front, contacting people. And there is a balance, right? You don't want to annoy people, but also if you never reach out, your lists get cold and people don't know what you're doing. So why would, how would they support you, and why do you consider them a member if you never talk to them and never see them? So we need to consistently reach out via phone, via email, via text, via social media, via other means, in order to activate people and get them involved in our organizing work. If people don't know what we're doing, they can't get involved. And a lot of times people will just kind of post on social media and say they'll get it, but they don't, right? Only some people get social media, and it's important that we have a multi-pronged, approach and strategy to doing this, because your social media post will get some people, your email will get some people, your text bank will get some people, your phone bank will get some people, right? And so when you're sending emails, for example, you know who opens them and closes them. You're using a legitimate, contact management software. And if I see you know, that Robin opens every single email. I know we're communicating with Robin, but Lou has never opened an email. We're probably going to lose spam. We should probably engage in another way. We should send a text or a call to Lou. And once we start talking to Lou, we can say, hey, can you check your spam filter? Because I don't think you're getting our emails. And then Lou will either say, oh, you're right, I'm not, or no, I'm ignoring your emails, which is, you know, a perfectly acceptable thing at times. So this means that, you know, for green parties, we've got to have up-to-date contact lists, effective methods to contact, and a contact management system that can help us track how we're talking to people. And we can get these tools either through full suite services that offer, you know, everything in one place, or single tools that can be combined into a larger system. Having a list isn't the only thing though, right? We want to grow. We want to grow as a party, and that means we need to grow the number of people that we can talk to. A voter is about the lowest level of political participation you can have, right? We don't have a contact for the voter, which means we can't engage them, which means we can't get them energized. This means we can't get them, turn them into a, you know, the next level up from a voter, which would be like an active level supporter if we're talking like an Alinsky style moving up ladders of engagement. If we know, you know, in a lot of states, like we don't know who our voters is. My state has no, we don't have partisan registration, and that's true for a lot, you know, over 24 states, I believe. A little less than half the states don't have partisan registration, so we don't know who the Greens are, right? We aren't told. If you're in a state with partisan registration, that's awesome. You can get, you know, your lists, and you know who to start with your. Illinois, we don't have that. So we need to consistently grow our lists. What that means when we're organizing in our community or supporting the work of others, of our allies, we need to make sure that we're able and active, not only to meet people, but to collect that contact information, right? When you go out to that, you know, go out to a rally and you have a great conversation with someone, and then you go home and you're like, I don't have, how do I get a hold of them? How do I tell them, right? And if it's social media, that's a very, very loose connection. That doesn't translate into an email that can be put into our systems or a phone number that can be called. You know, social media is a very, very loose connection. So when we're doing our work out in the communities, when we're knocking doors, right? Every door you knock, if you have a good conversation, it's not just thank you. You know, it's not just thank you for you know, talking to me. It's thank you for talking to me. Can I have your email? Can I have your phone number so that we can follow up, so that we can tell you about what we're doing? You know, so we can come back and continue this conversation through deep canvassing or relational organizing, right? So when we're out in the world, we need to make sure that we're translating those connections that we make into tangible contacts that we can put into our database. And this all, I will say, this whole slide and all the things, it seems rather predatory to a lot of Greens. They don't like the idea of harvesting contact data. But the reality is it's what we have to do if we're going to get hold of people. Another way, I mentioned voter rolls at the bottom, but another key way to collect, you know, grow our list is through petitions, surveys, polls on social media and our websites. And again, like I said, Greens don't often like this, but the reality is when you see a petition on social media, it's a contact harvesting operation. Those petitions are not, 99% of the time, are not turned into anyone. They are not social media petitions in most cases are not even a legitimate, viable, legal thing that could be turned into someone, right? Petitions, especially in Illinois, we're really strict on them, but petitions tend to have a specific form that they must take in a specific way. They must be collected in a specific way. They must be turned in. So when you see a poll on social media and it's asking you for your email, that's what they're after. They really, you know, they might care what you think. They might want your data. They might want your response to the poll for their internal purposes. But the real prize there is that email address, that phone number. And the same goes for petitions and all of that, right? I know during the Jill Stein campaign, a large portion of their new contacts came from petitions, and the same is true for the Hawkins Pucker campaign in 2020, right? We put out almost weekly multiple petitions, surveys. How do you feel? What do you feel? What are your top issues? And we took those and we, analyzed the data, but all of that data went into our contact system so that we could keep contacting them and try to move them from, random social media interactions to active volunteers and voters. And another part of this, I said it earlier, I said keep your list warm. And what that means is we need to keep when I say we need to keep our lists warm, it means we need to keep contacting people. Not every day, right? We don't need to be bugging people. We need to find that balance. But if you only send an email every few months, the way that email algorithms work, especially with most of the major, with Google and Hotmail and Yahoo and the major platforms for it, you're going to the longer between your emails, the more likely you're going to go straight to spam. How you get over that is by sending regular, consistent emails that the people are engaging in, and then your stuff will start to get through, not only to the people that are opening it, but to the other people, because they're kind of tracking where it's coming from. And that means that they'll see, oh, this is a legitimate source that's being sent. They're an active source that's being sent. It's not just a cache of emails that are sent out once a year. So we got to keep our lists warm. And that also helps you in keeping people engaged by letting them know what you're doing. So some options on this front. Nation Builder is kind of the party standard. I am personally of the opinion we need to end it as the party standard. It is incredibly expensive. It is it is kind of, and I think the reason we chose it is because it's an all-in-one tool, right? It does our contact lists, it does our email marketing, it does our payment processing, it does our website hosting. We can do events and actions like petitions and surveys. We can send text messages through it. We can do, create walk lists and canvas sheets through it. And so it's become the standard that's used by the national party in a lot of states. And I will give it this, it is a great contact management system. It was built first and foremost to be your email marketing system, to manage your contacts and to help you out with that. But it very much lives up to the saying, jack of all trades, master of none, right? Except it might kind of be able to claim a master on the database side. Its payment processing is just the same as everyone else's, nothing special. Its website hosting is terrible. Nation Builder sites are terrible to build, and they use their own kind of proprietary methods that makes them not compatible with other things. But I'm working with Howie Hawkins to eventually archive a lot of his, decades of campaign work, and he's got these Nation Builder websites that he's had for when he ran for city council, and when he ran for governor, and when he ran for auditor, and they're all on Nation Builder. And my only real option is to either from scratch create the entire website and put it onto a host, or to take screenshots or PDFs and kind of compile it that way. Because Nation Builder, you have to keep paying to keep it up, which means you're paying for everything for a campaign that's 10 years old. And it's not a good archival system, and it doesn't translate into something like WordPress, where I can, get unlimited hosting for $15 a month. So, Nation Builder is the standard. I think we should be moving away from it. I'll get into what I think we should move to. Another option is Action Network, which I see I misspelled. But Action Network is, it's got a free version where you kind of, your donation page has a powered by Action Network thing and stuff like that. But for $10 a month, you get a service that will be more than enough for most campaigns, most local chapters. Even most state parties would probably be fine on $10 a month. For $100 a month, which is what Illinois does, we get the ability to have subgroups, right? So in Illinois, we've got our Illinois Green Party Action Network account, and then the Cook County Green Party in Chicago has their own whole separate system, but it feeds up, right? And then the Sangamo Party where I live, and the Shawnee Party in Southern Illinois, a DuPage party in in the collar counties, and our local candidates, and our congressional candidates, and anyone who gets involved with the Green Party gets given their own group, and they get full access to the full suite of tools. And as they get new members coming into their contact sheet, they filter straight up into the Illinois Green Party, right? So we get all those contacts without any work. It's all automated. Action Network is a similar type of almost all-in-one system. It does your contact marketing, it does your your contact management, it does your email marketing, it does your payment processing. It has events, it has actions. It can do SMS text stuff. It has letter campaigns, which are like email campaigns where you say, we want to email our city councilor, we want to email our governor, and it lets you set up a template, and people can one click and send an email out about this issue. Like I said, the $10 a month can handle most chapters, can handle most candidates. You don't need much more. And then for $100 a month, a state party can get these subgroups. You might, if you're sending a lot of emails, you might incur a little bit more cost in that you're limited on your emails, and I think it's like $2 per 1,000 or something once you go over your cap. So it's really affordable. Civi CRM is where I think we should move. It's open source. It's free, but you have to pay for hosting and development if you want development. It can do your contact management, your marketing, your payment processing, your events, and your actions. In the Holly Hawkins and the Walker campaign, it's what we use. We spent tens of thousands of dollars developing a system, and by the end of the campaign, we were taking all of our money, we were doing all of our emails, we were taking all of our volunteer forms. All of that was running through Civi CRM. The problem with it is it takes a little more tech skill, and you've got to have hosting. So these are a little bit of a barrier, but Civi CRM is a platform upon which we could build a green, contact management infrastructure that we could share, that every state party, every local, every chapter could have, and it could all filter up into a national list. To do that with Nation Builder, based on my talk with Michael Dennis, who's a former Green Steering Committee member and staffer at Nation Builder, we're talking about $50,000 plus a year to do that, right? And so for the cost of probably a few $100s a month in hosting fees, once we have it developed and turnkey, we could set that up with Civi CRM. If this all seems like it's too much, you should at least get something like MailChimp or Constant Contact, right? To do your email marketing, to hold your database list. And a big reason why you need to do this is because like I said, those major companies' those major email platform algorithms are going to stop you from being able to mass email from your personal accounts, right? When you try to email 50 people from your personal account, well, 50 it might let you. When you try to email 10,000, it's going to stop you. It's going to flag you as a spammer, and you're in trouble, right? So if this all seems like a lot, at least go on and get a free MailChimp account, load up your lists, and make sure you're sending those emails. Next up is project management. We use it for for project and team management. We can assign tasks, we can do deadlines. Often they will have communications tools like chats, message boards, and calendars. They can provide us a single distraction-free location for organizing work. I know a lot of Green parties have things like Facebook groups, chats, email lists. These are all really bad organizing spaces, right? Any of us who've been on the national committee list can tell you that email is not a good communication platform when you're engaging with a lot of people and when you have action and organizing is your goal. They can let us assign clear tasks and deadlines. We can manage multiple teams, multiple projects, and we have multiple mediums for communication. My personal favorite is Basecamp. It is expensive but unlimited. And so what it gives you is you can access it through desktop, mobile, browser, and email, but it gives you different bases. So each chapter in Illinois Green Party can have its own base. Each campaign gets its own base. And in those bases, they have group chats, they have message boards, they have check-ins, they have document sharing, they have to-do lists, they have Kanban boards for tracking projects, they have events and a calendar. And so you get all of this in one place. It's end-to-end encrypted, which means you can share passwords in it. You can talk, you have security in it. And while I did say it is expensive, the Young Eco-Socialists, which are the youth caucus of the party, rent out space on their base camp installation for $250 a year, which is very affordable. And they're not at a capacity where they're ready for it yet. But if people really were interested, and we had 10, they had 10 state parties, 15 state parties signing up, I think you would see that number decrease, right? As more capacity comes on. An alternative to skip over one that I know the National Party is talking about is Lumio. It is open source, which is positive for everyone. It can be hosted by us, which again can be a positive, but it also creates a barrier with technological skill and access to things like that. There's a free version, but I would guess that most Greens, if they were going to try to use it, would probably be between $25 and $75 a month. It lets you manage multiple projects and teams. It's browser-based, desktop or mobile. It's got a calendar, it's got scheduling, it's got voting and polls, that kind of stuff. But it allows you to have multiple workspaces so that the different ballot access team has their own, and the fundraising team has their own, and the social media team has their own, and everybody's got their own spaces to work. If you're just looking for communication, right, Discord is a free option. I'm going to actually have the next thing is communication. We'll talk about a few more, but Discord is free, and it gives you can set up as many projects and teams as you want. You can access it through mobile, through browser, through email, and it also gives you voice and video chat options. And then on the other side of that, if you're only looking for project management, you say we're happy with our email lists or whatever we're using for communication or Slack. Trello is a good project task management. It's free. There are obviously add-ons and things you can buy, but it gives you Kanban style to-dos that you can to do calendars, automated workflows, and lots of different integrations with other stuff. One note I do want to make on the project management side, or actually that note, I'll have to move it, should have been on the contact management side. We don't want to be using the NGP van. We don't want to be using minivan. We don't want to be using any of these things. And the reason for that is that it's owned by the Democratic Party, right? When people in the Bernie Sanders campaign were like, why does Hillary now have my contact information? The answer is because both Bernie and Hillary used the NGP van. And when you use the NGP van, the Democratic Party, the DNC, owns all of the data that comes into it, right? So if you're a Green campaign or a Green state and you're using the NGP van for your contact management, you're basically handing all of your data directly to our opponents, the Democratic Party. So we want to avoid that. For general communications, chat, email, text, as I said earlier, I'm not a fan of email lists. I don't think they encourage good and positive communication. I think they're kind of parallel communication. You're not talking to each other, you're talking at the same time into the same void. And so there are other options to have more effective and efficient internal and external communications. We can have better real-time communication and coordination, which helps us with having better campaigns and parties. And other tools can also kind of help us get different channels and threads and integrate with other things. First up, Slack and Flock are very similar. They're group messaging apps. They're available across mobile platforms and desktops. You get channels that let you separate things out, channels, subchannels. They're both secure. They're both free version have a limitation where the limitation is that you start to lose communications. And so, I think with Slack, it's 90 days. You get 90 days, and then on day 91, that post from day one falls off, and you can't see it anymore. For a campaign, that might not be a problem, but for a party, that's probably a problem. I believe Flock is a 10,000 message limit, or at least that's what it used to be. And I can say in the Holly Hawkins, Angela Walker campaign, we used Flock at the very beginning, and it took us less than 2 weeks to hit that 10,000 limit. So it seems like a big number, but once you actually start organizing on a large scale, it's really, you get through it fast. For contacting outside of us, Call Hub is a good phone banking and text banking system. It lets you do it all, create call lists, create scripts, assign callers to different things. For phone banking, it's about 7 cents a minute. For text banking, it's about 3.4 cents per minute. And for robocalls, it's just under 5 cents a minute. And so it's relatively affordable. You get content, it's FEC and FCC compliant. You get contact notes and history. It's browser based, so no one has to install anything. And people can call via their browser or via their phone. It changes the pricing a little. But Call Hub is one thing I often bring up when I say we need to be, systems as a way to be more efficient. If your state party has $100 to give to a candidate, and you give them the $100 and they buy printed material, they might get a few hundred pages. If they buy yard signs, they may get 10 to 20 yard signs out of that deal, right? But for text banking, we can get over 2,000 texts out of that, and those 2,000 texts can be used on that campaign or any campaign, right? And you can, if your party is the infrastructure, right, then you can spread the wealth, right? You can use that those 2,000 texts that you got for $100 to text for a whole bunch of different campaigns across the scope of, across your entire ballot. And so that's one example of how this kind of systems focused infrastructure can be more efficient. The last one I want to put on there, specifically because you need to have an encrypted messaging system. Not for everyday communications necessarily, but when someone needs a password, when someone needs your the party credit card information, you've got to make sure you send that protected. You cannot send a password. You can, but you should not send a password or a credit card number through email. You shouldn't send it through normal SMS text. You need to use something encrypted. So Signal is a free secure communication app. It's end-to-end encrypted. It's on iOS, Android, and desktop. You can do voice, text, and video calling, document sharing, image sharing, and it's all protected. So when you get that new engaged young person who wants to run your Twitter, you can easily with Signal, or you can use WhatsApp for another, or Basecamp, or Flock or Slack that are all encrypted. You can use those to send that information securely. If you don't have it, Basecamp or Slack or Flock or another encryption option, Signal is a good one that's easy to get. For social media, I do whole workshops on this, but the thing I really need people to understand is that social media is a tool to help you organize. Social media in and of itself is not organizing, right? It has to connect to the real world work that you're doing. Social media resources can cover a wide range of tools that can help you with various areas, help you with connecting and informing and engaging with current and potential supporters, help you with collaboration, help you quickly respond to current events. One major area I think All Green should focus on with social media is having a scheduling platform. Because when you have a scheduling platform, it means you don't have to just remember, oh, I wanted to post at 11 this morning. You have it scheduled out a day or two, a week ahead of time, right? And then you can sit down, you can focus on social media, you can schedule a whole week out, you can schedule the next day out. Every single night I sit down and I do social media scheduling. And it allows me to then go to work, not have to worry about whether the work is scheduled it all up. Buffer is right now what I'm recommending to Greens. You can get 3 platforms for free, 30 scheduled posts for free, which means when I say scheduled, once it posts, that number is back up. So if you've got 3 platforms and you're posting to all of them at once, that means that you can you can schedule 10 different posts to each of those platforms, and they're ready to go. And once one posts, you can schedule another one. It can connect you to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I refuse to call it X, YouTube, TikTok, Mastodon, Pinterest, some others. I used to, for years, I recommended Hootsuite. I really, 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 really love Hootsuite. Not only does it do scheduling, but it lets you manage messaging. It lets you monitor your feeds. It's got built-in analytics. You can do all of your ads simultaneously from Instagram. It integrates, or not Hootsuite, it integrates with a whole bunch of things. But they've recently raised their price to the point that it's outside of the reach of most screens. Starting prices, when I originally started suggesting it, they did the same 3 platforms for free. Then it went to 3 platforms for $15, which was still reasonable. But now they're unlimited platforms, but you got to pay $100 a month starting level, and then beyond most screens, a strong state party or national level campaign might be engaging in it. If you're at that level of your social media work and you have that level of resources, I do consider Hootsuite to be far better of a tool than Buffer, but it's not as accessible. StreamYard is a great one. It's got a free version, but $25 is the likely cost to get access to the full version. It lets you do live stream broadcasting, simple one-click overlays, and professional branding. You can put viewer questions on the screen, and you can simultaneously stream to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. You can stream to TikTok. You can create reels and stories out of the things that you do, and you can have custom integrations as well. If you've ever seen Howie Hawkins' weekly podcast or the 101 series or education work I do with the Green Socialist Organizing Project streaming, we use StreamYard, and we've done a weekly podcast since the 2020 campaign using this service. It's really easy. Literally, if you can use Zoom, you can use it. Another great tool is Canva, and it's for graphic design. Free version lets you do quite a bit, but there's a $30 a month version, plan that lets you get like 5 users and really allow your users to collaborate on graphic design. It's browser based, right? So you don't need to install everything. Really user friendly, lots of templates and collaboration tools for file sharing and stuff. So I just dumped a whole bunch of stuff, right? And people who have seen my workshops before know that they're often high speed. Chris talks fast and he dumps a lot of information on us. So to kind of take a step back and put all of that information in context, here's kind of a samples infrastructure, right? That you, as a state party, you can think about. I would definitely suggest that we think about systems from a top filtering down, right? It's otherwise if every local has their own infrastructure, 1, it's not consistent, and 2, we're double paying, right? We're making sure that if we're all paying for the same thing, we're just earning money, giving them the multinational. So I say state party. It would be really great if our national party could get together, come up with real systems infrastructure that could filter down. But at this point, I think the state party is where we can actually implement this, right? You can go home and start doing this right now, whereas doing something like this. But first and foremost, right, we need that contact database. We need our CRM to both access your lists and the ability for people to build their own. As you give it states, to campaigns, to organizers, to coalitions, things like Action Networks, to CRM, and MailChimp was what we were talking about there. Web hosting could be standalone or connected to another service. Nation Builder is as the main one that Greens use. It comes built in. So if you have Nation Builder, you don't need to worry about a web host because you've got it for them. There are a million web hosts, Bluehost and Green Geeks and GoDaddy, and there's a million, right? And so pick the one that you're comfortable with. I list Green Geeks here because I know that there are a lot of Greens that use them, and also they have an environmental lean where they kind of offset a lot of their server production, in terms of carbon credits and planting trees kind of stuff. And at Green Geeks for $15 a month, you can get unlimited websites and unlimited emails, right? So as a state party in the Online Green Party, when a new campaign comes on, we have a template website that we put up. It's a one-pager. We put it up, we host it, and then we teach them how to use it, right? And same thing for a local, they get it, right? Just by becoming a member, just by going green, they get it. Communication systems, You know, if your state party has Zoom or Blue Jeans or whatever you're using, make sure you're sharing it, right? If you're paying for it, we should be getting the most of our money out of it. So that means we should be sharing it with our locals. That means we should be sharing it with our campaigns. We should be, offering these things up when you're in the room at the coalition and someone says, "Does anyone have a paid Zoom account?" Oh, we do. Now you're contributing, right? And I can say, like in Illinois, we have Basecamp, and I think it was last year, the Medicare for All March for Medicare for All in Chicago was organized on our Basecamp, right? We brought it to the coalition, and then people were like, "We really liked that. That was awesome. Keep following up with us." Through hosting, you can, through web hosting, you can get email address creation and listservs if you want to set those up. Phone banking, things like Call Hub. You can offer project management, whether that be Basecamp or Trello or something like that, where when they come up, it's like, cool, we'll create bases in Basecamp for you. We'll create channels and for me. And then helping people with their cloud storage, whether that be Google Drive, Dropbox, or the two main ones. Tresorit is a popular, really, 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 really encrypted one. And then Proton Drive is made by the people who do Proton Mail. So it's an open source option, right? But when I look at this, right, we're paying $15 a month for our green deeds, $15 a month for our video calling, $25 for our live stream thing, about $20 a month for our Basecamp. So for a few $100s, the Illinois Green Party can really offer a lot to our people to kind of give them a boost to get them. And then to close up before I take questions real quick, I do want to address kind of the new guy in the room, and that's AI, right? And I'm not going to get into the moral and the ethics of AI. That is a multi-day conversation on its own, getting into data scraping and job loss and environmental impact. It's a lot, right? But it's in the room. It's the new AI has become a major buzzword in recent months, and a big part of that is that it's becoming more and more and more accessible to the general public. And like any other technological tool, AI machine learning tools are a tool, right? They are not inherently good. They are not inherently bad. They just are. And the virtue of them comes from how we use them. So we should engage them as such. They are very, very powerful, but right now, if we're using them, we really need to know that they're not trustworthy yet, right? There was recently a case of a legal case in New York where the lawyer used ChatGTP to create a filing. He submitted the filing. The prosecutors and judge looked at it and said, "We can't find any of these cases." And so they asked him to produce evidence of the cases. So he asked ChatGTP to create to produce evidence of the cases that ChatGTP cited, and ChatGTP made up out of nowhere whole legal decisions by courts, right? And the lawyer was sanctioned and dressed down by the judge, and the lawyer basically said, "I had no idea that it could make something up," right? So we've really got to be careful when we're dealing with it. A human still needs to have a hand. Not at a point where we can trust these things. So some potential uses, automated systems is a huge one, right? We're resource poor, we have overloaded volunteers. So the more that we can automate things and take off someone's plate, the better. Chatbots, automated email responses, automated data management, like deduplication. They can really help us handle our administrative tasks, right? When a new member signs up to your contact form, most CRMs will have an automated system that you can set up where it sends them an email and says, "Hey, thanks for signing up. Here's where you can learn more information," right? And then it'll move on, and then you can schedule another one that a week after they get another one, and a month after they get a different one, and you can create these pre-programmed levels of engagement through automation. Research and data analysis. Summarization and data analysis is really an area where these models, especially like ChatGPT, excel. Right? If there's a lot of information, you need to read something and you just want it summarized so that you can write something, write up a post about it, you can ask them. But remember, you've got to make sure you're reviewing it and doing a little check. And then the same thing, content creation. AI tools can help create drafts for things like press releases. we got to check it, right? Same thing for social media copy. Social media copy and graphics, I'm a little more comfortable with because it'd only be creating what you said, right? It's not the same as saying, create a press release about this issue. It's saying, take this information and make me a graphic in the WPA style about the green teal, and it will do that. So that's an area we can look. I don't know if anyone messes with Photoshop, but the new AI tools in Photoshop look phenomenal. Like, you can change the sky by typing add clouds, and it will give you a selection of clouds. You can say cut out person and take the background out, right? They really do look phenomenal. But so with that, I will open up for questions.
Chris,
Yep.
can we take a few questions from the chat first and then go to the folks on the call?
Yes, I'm scrolling through those right now.
I think the first one's Randy Toller's. But yeah, you're gonna do that? Okay, you don't want me to read them.
Oh.
Okay.
So Randy Toller asks how local mass media about local mass media coverage. Yeah, so local media is a hell of a lot easier to get access to than national media. You can have those personal relationships, and you can use these type of tools to help you kind of maintain the contact. Like I've got Civi CRMs for our press release, or not Civi. I've got MailChimps for like our press contacts and things like that. But yeah, and then I'm sorry, I'm running to find a link, but I've also worked in my work with the Green Socialist Organizing Project, we've created a local media guide that I just shared that goes through, how to actually talk to local media, how to get them to show up, how to engage, that kind of thing. Susan shared a couple of links for like kind of graphic design stuff and that kind of thing. Justin says, I've heard Wix has a decent background CRM on the background. I hate Wix. I don't like it as a website building tool, but it's probably the second biggest one after WordPress. The one thing I will say is Wix is an Israeli company. So if we're engaging in BDS, we should not be using Wix. Scrolling up. The question is Basecamp open source? The answer is no. And the same for Call Hub, also no. In my experience, we have an affinity for for open source, but we don't tend to have the technological knowledge to deploy open source. We tend to have problems with them. We're also, open source often requires your ability to host, to do some basic coding. And so it's often easier where affordable for things like Call Hub to, jump. Just kind of get what's already done. If you want to call on some people.
Okay, I have Nissan. Let me ask you to unmute. Hold on a second.
Okay. Hello?
Yep.
Oh, why is my camera? I'm sorry, 1 second. I think my light's on. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm curious that of all the technologies, as a technologist myself, you didn't mention the use of blockchain technology. I think one of the issues that you discussed, which is the hosting part, which is incredibly important, hosting our own technologies. There is a way we can do this through distributed cloud sharing software, and this can be connected through a blockchain ledger type system. There is already 2 different systems that use this. One is as a consensus mechanism by using free storage space, by basically loaning free storage space as a collateral in one of the, I forgot what, in one of the cryptocurrencies. And I think that we probably could look into doing a similar version of this to a decentralized localization in a personal cloud infrastructure, so we can host these different things in a decentralized manner. Now with the advent of 6G, and because now we already passed 5G, we're going to 6G now, and the prominence of the Internet of Things, we can actually use this as a decentralized architecture to host more open source tools. But I do want to get into how would you want to push in creating and using more open source tools. I mean, engaging in people like me, which are like IT professionals, because there are a lot of people like me still out here, but I myself is working on a communications platform because I feel that the problem we have is we don't have an actual dedicated communications platform. Instead, we're using all these different communication platforms, and it's causing an issue.
Yeah.
So speak a little more about that.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of unified systems. Kind of like I've said a few times, like in my ideal world, it would be GPUS that is providing a lot of this and filtering it down. There could be rental, costs that are passed on to the states to help fund it. But that's a much bigger organizational lift. Getting something like that through the national party is not a fast process. GPUS is often a dinosaur, like most large organizations are. On the idea of all of like blockchain, I'm definitely not opposed to that. This workshop's more about what can you do now, right? And the big barrier that the Green Party has had when it comes to implementing, open source or our own versions of things, is our heart is in the right place, but we don't have the skills, right? We aren't coders. We don't have the ability to make these things. Like I said, I would wager that the Hawkins Walker campaign probably spent around 50 grand on Sippy CRM. And I would say we're about halfway to what we need to be to where we could like turn it over and have a turnkey thing, right? So what we need in these areas, is the volunteers to come in and, we should give them a stipend, right? Like at least a stipend, if not a wage. People doing this kind of heavy work, like coding, that is really serious, should volunteers are great, but we should be giving them something for their work. But the big barrier to that, I think, right now is just our capacity as a party to realize it. I would very much love to see us start utilizing blockchain outside of the Ponzi scheme that it is presently associated with in crypto. So I would like to see it, move past that bad reputation that it has and show what it can achieve.
Okay, let's go to Susan next.
Hi, yes. I thank you for pointing out that NGP Van is owned by the Democrats, and we absolutely need to avoid them. What I wanted to find out, because I had this impression, I could be wrong, are there other resources out there that Greens are using that the Democrats actually own or have a lot of control over? Do you know about, these? And I had the impression, for example, that Nation Builder had a connection with the Democrats, but I may be wrong about that. But if you know of anything else like that, I really think we need to make sure we're not letting the Democrats get their hands on our data, et cetera. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, so a big thing is, right, the existing products that are out there, we're often sharing people. And I mentioned merchandise earlier. We had the same, we used the same in 2020, and the National Party now uses the same merchandise provider that the Democrats do. The guy who founded it was actually Hillary's merchandise coordinator during the 2016 campaign. But the reality is, if we want a union full service fulfillment, warehouse that prints on demand and does all this kind of stuff, they're the only game in town, right? They not only is their warehouse union, their print shops are union, but the T-shirt that they are printing on was Union US made. And in 2020, they actually negotiated to get one of the major t-shirt manufacturers to reopen a unionized line because they closed it. And so, you know, that's one thing to keep in mind, is that a lot of times we will be using the same systems as Democrats, right? Action Network, which I mentioned that Illinois uses, and that was on my list, is used by Democrats and Democratic front groups, right? Like this, with Sierra Club and things like that. They'll use it, but they don't get access to our stuff. It's separately owned. We have full control and ownership over our data. And so, you know, like I said to the last question, right? I would love to see us creating our own infrastructure and building green of all of this type of stuff. You know, utilizing open source and all of that. But in the phase we're in right now, when we have to use, you know, existing commercial products, I think that's our real big concern, is making sure that, you know, we own our data. You know, you look at Action Network, you see a lot of, you know, they work with a lot of Democrats. Or when you look at our merch provider, they work with a lot of Democrats, but they aren't sharing anything. And that's the difference with the NGP van, which is literally DNC, you know, owned, and they sign contracts to go with DNC. So long term, I think you're right. You know, that's the direction we need to move. You know, short term, we've just got to make sure that we're clear on, you know, data ownership stuff.
Chris, the workshop is supposed to be ending now, but there isn't another, I don't believe another group coming on for another half an hour. So do you want to go another 5 minutes? We have 2 more hands up.
Yeah, I can definitely keep going. And I'll also throw out, I'll put it, my email, you can email me. I'm happy to continue conversations. I'm happy to coordinate people. Like if we've got coders,
yes, I was calling.
work.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was, you know, if you're a coder that wants to get involved and do, you know, start working on this kind of stuff, I'd be happy to talk to people and, you know, coordinate with them already. But my email, you can reach the easiest email with a name like Chris Blankenhorn, which is super long, is to email me at chris@greensocialist.net, and I'm putting that into the chat along with links to a bunch of the stuff that we did here.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Orlando to unmute, then we'll go to Elizabeth Green, then we'll end things here.
Yep, that works for me.
Go ahead and unmute Orlando and ask
Hey.
your question. Keep
Hey.
it short, please.
Hey, this is Orlando Johnson, Oakland Green Party, Alameda County Council. And out of all my Zoom meetings, Chris, you did a great presentation. You
Thank
broke
you.
it down. It was educational. And the question is, can we get a copy of that great power presentation you have for educational purposes?
Yeah, I just put it in the link. I just put it in the chat. The slideshows there, the one sheet with the things I talked about and others is there, and then an archive to past workshops is there. This workshop video will be uploaded as soon as I get it, and then this presentation is already in that folder. And then, you know, I put my email too in there too, and when I've done these in the past, I've always said, and I'll say it again, if you have a state party or, you know, a campaign or a local that wants to talk about this kind of stuff, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to, you know, work with you and find a time to get on a Zoom. I'm more than happy for you to say, we need help with this specific area, and kind of deep dive on that area with someone. I've done it for, you know, numerous other parties over the years that I've done this workshop. It's a little harder for me now. I'm a new dad with a toddler, so my time is a little limited. I'm back at work after being a stay-at-home dad, so my time's even more limited. But I'm more than happy to, you know, try to find some time to spend an hour or two talking to people if they want to dive deeper.
Okay. All right, Elizabeth.
Hi, thanks so much. So we do have a possibility of paying people for their so-called volunteer work in cryptocurrency of any kind, maybe carbon credits or social credits. We can make it one up if we like and do it all on blockchain. We can collect what people have done. We can make it so that whenever somebody does something green, it's encoded, it's on a blockchain. We can make it a green blockchain, and we can make it a whole lot of fun, especially for young people who really want to learn new technology. Over.
Yeah, I'm team stay far, far away. And if we're gonna give someone something for their work, we should pay them in money, not fiat made up things. And then on the larger blockchain, the larger crypto issue is that crypto is environmentally its current deployment. There are alternatives. And Lou says money is a made up thing. That's true, but I can go down to the store and spend it. I think I can think of one place in town I could spend a fraction of a Bitcoin. But yeah, the current deployment, and I think it's important for us to understand this too, think about it this way too, right? The current deployments of crypto are incredibly, ecologically bad. Bitcoin in particular, it produces a massive amount of carbon. It requires a massive amount of electricity and energy. And it's literally by design a Ponzi scheme. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. In that sense, we should, as we're expanding and we're starting to create this infrastructure, blockchain in particular has a lot of potential to be really, really powerful. And the same could be said in theoretical ways for a green crypto type thing as well.
Okay, why don't you wrap it up, Chris, and then I'll stop the recording.
Yep. So yeah, like I said, thank you everybody for coming. I put that link but you can find all of this information at bit.ly/DOT-info. That's bit.ly/DOT-INFO. And that contains workshops going back a few years on this same topic. You can go back and see me before Hootsuite ruined it all by jacking up their prices, hyping them up and things like that. But thank you for coming. Like I said, this is one part of it, but I think it's a really important thing for us to think about. I really hope everyone goes home to their locals, goes home to their state parties, and kind of looks at that, those questions of, what do we provide to our members? What do we provide to our candidates? What do we provide to our chapters, to our organizers? And start to think about what can we provide, not necessarily a tangible amount of money or anything like that, but what do we need to do the work efficiently, and how can we compile a system of tools that help us achieve that. And yeah, you can email me at chris@greensocialist.net. I'm happy to talk to people. Thank you all for coming.